Cola, I wish to highlight again the fact that your government is not properly controlling immigration at Dublin Airport and at all other entry points, which has grave negative consequences. Not arriving at an Irish entry point without documentation breaks the law, and no one is being prosecuted. The government is misleading the public by praising immigration benefits while allowing people without proper ID into the country through a flawed system. This intentional confusion aims to silence criticism. While we all support genuine asylum seekers fleeing persecution, the government's approach makes it hard to distinguish between genuine cases and those exploiting the system. Many asylum seekers are economic migrants, not fleeing for fear of their lives, leading to what's called asylum tourism. Despite being deemed safe countries, the likes of Georgia are sending many asylum seekers to Ireland. The lack of a robust verification process poses a threat to the safety and compromises the asylum process integrity. The government claims all asylum seekers are fingerprinted and checked for criminal records, but this is patently untrue and misleading. 13,521 people seeking asylum have been allowed into Dublin Airport since 2018 without a shred of ID or any documentation. This figure has been confirmed by yourself, Minister for Justice, in a parliamentary reply to me just recently. This is a very serious matter, yet there is no investigation, no consequences, and indeed no prosecutions. Allowing unidentified individuals to arrive here without consequences for destroying their travel IDs is not only resulting in exploitation of Irish resources, which are incidentally entirely funded by the taxpayer, but is also undermining the social cohesion. But despite the consequences, this issue is getting worse, not better. The numbers arriving at Dublin Airport without any form of ID, despite needing it to board the aircraft on which they arrive here, is skyrocketing under your government. The figures paint a concerning picture of lax immigration controls and serious security risks. For example, in 2018, 895 individuals arrived without any shred of ID. The numbers continued to rise in 2019 with 1,579 undocumented arrivals. Even during the pandemic, in challenging times of 2020, when travel was significantly reduced due to the pandemic, 712 individuals arrived with no proper documentation. That's only through Dublin Airport. In 2021, despite ongoing restrictions, 2,982 individuals arrived without travel ID. In 2022, a staggering 4,968 undocumented arrivals were allowed in here that year, and the numbers was 3,000 last year, 3,285. I mean, what's going on? These are not being followed up. The figures highlight that since your government came to office, 11,047 individuals arrived at Dublin Airport without a shred of ID. And that's only Dublin Airport, as I said. And you can make all the statements you like, but this is simple fact. And these have been absorbed into the iPad system then with some may have criminal records, but they have because they broke the law by coming in illegally. And it's just as if they didn't do anything wrong.
Thank you. Taoiseach, please.
Thanks, Deputy. As I said before, and I'll continue to say it, migration is a very sensitive issue and is abused by politicians all over the world in order to gain votes, and often that is based on misinformation and based on hate-mongering, Deputy. So I will say it and I'll say it again, migration in the round has been a very good thing for Ireland. If it was not for migrants coming here to work in our health service, to build our houses, to look after older people, we wouldn't be able to provide the kind of services we provide now. Far from being the cause of our problems, migration is part of the solution to many of our problems, particularly when it comes to building new homes and running our health and social care services. The major companies that invest in Ireland, that pay billions in tax, that allow us to run our schools, our hospitals, our pension system, wouldn't be here were it not for the fact that they can attract skilled labour from all over the world. Our buses wouldn't run, our restaurants wouldn't operate, our shops wouldn't be open. And I'm going to say that again and again and again, anytime anyone raises the issue of migration in this chamber, because I think it's important that we always acknowledge that in the start of any contribution. I hope other members, including opposition members, will at least do that too. In relation to Dublin Airport, Deputy, the number of people coming through Dublin Airport without documents has actually fallen. We've stepped up our activities in that regard. We now have Gardaí in airports in other parts of Europe, working with authorities there. We increasingly check people coming off the planes, not just at border control. We're liaising with airlines to make sure that their staff are properly trained. We have fines which we impose on airlines if they allow people onto aircraft undocumented, and we are seeing a reduction in the number of people coming through Dublin Airport undocumented. We estimate, and we believe based on evidence, that the majority of people who seek international protection in Ireland come across the border from north to south. And I don't think anyone's suggesting that we close the border between north and south. And of course, they go in the other direction too. And that's the reality of the situation. You did say something, Deputy. Two things, Deputy, I think require at least a degree of correction or explanation. 40% of people who apply for international protection get it. Not far off half. So we need to bear in mind that when people see a group of migrants coming into the country, roughly half of them are determined by our system as deserving of international protection. It's not a small minority. It's 40%, not far off half, and that's why we need to make sure that we assess everybody's application fairly if they make it. If somebody comes to an airport without documents, they're sent back. However, if they apply for international protection, well then in that scenario, they're allowed to have their application heard, and heard fairly. Now, unless you're suggesting that we leave the UN and exempt ourselves from international law and become some sort of hermit kingdom, that's going to continue the case, Deputy, and that's just not common sense. Finally, it's not always the case, Deputy, that people destroy their documents. We don't find destroyed documents in bins or in bathrooms. What happens is they're trafficked into the country, and the person who trafficked them takes the IDs off them at a certain point, probably while they're still on the plane. And we're doing everything we can to crack down on trafficking, and that's why it's so important that we're part of the EU Asylum Pact, because we can only do that on a multilateral basis.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Taoiseach, I'd be delighted if he answered my question, but he answers a totally different question. And the figures are quoted by the person sitting two away from you there, the Minister for Justice, only last week. And you say the figures are dropping. In 2021, despite ongoing restrictions, 2,982 individuals arrived without travel ID in Dublin Airport. In 2022, 4,968 undocumented arrivals were allowed in. And in last year, 3,285. Are those figures dropping? The figures quoted from the Minister for Justice. You talk about misinformation and disinformation. You should get a gold medal for disseminating disinformation and untruths and downright lies. And we're not talking about anyone coming in or normal migration. We all welcome that, and people that apply to the system. We're talking about people who have broken the law, coming through Dublin Airport, and it's only Dublin Airport, that doesn't mention the ports. And you have the audacity to stand up here there and try and demonise people or anyone that asks. But the public are waiting for you. They see through your lies and your untruths. The figures are quoted by your Minister for Justice, not my figures, not from any paper or anybody else. Minister for Justice figures. Can we trust these figures at all so? If you want to stand up and say that they're all wrong and the figures are dropping, the same as you're talking about hospital trolleys dropping and waiting lists. Will you get real here? Or somebody pinch you and wake up to the fact of what's going on in the country? It's naked blackguarding of our system. People are coming through here with now shredded documentary evidence, which is a crime. And we're prosecuting people for television licenses and God knows what, no flash lamps on their bikes and God knows. And people can walk in here and some at traffic, which is horrific, but very, very few, I believe, and that is horrific if it does, but our country is just a sieve for them here. It's a joke.
Deputy, it's not in order to accuse the Taoiseach or any member of government or any colleague of lying in the House. It is not in order. Taoiseach.
Thanks, Deputy. You were in full flow and you were speaking very quickly, so I may have misunderstood you. But I think I heard you say the numbers were 4,000 in 2022 and 3,000 in 2023. That's a drop, Deputy. 4,000, 3,000. That's a drop. And I've explained to you exactly why that drop has occurred, because of actions that have been taken by the government. Deputy, if somebody enters the country through Dublin Airport without documents, one of two things happen. Either they get sent back, and that happens all the time. Alternatively, if they apply for international protection, well then they're entitled to have that application assessed, and assessed properly and assessed as quickly as we can, and that is what we do. And Deputy, it's not correct to make the automatic assumption that if somebody enters the country in an undocumented manner, that they've committed a crime. Many of these people, perhaps even most of them, Deputy, are trafficked. That's the truth of it. That's the truth of it. We don't find bins full of destroyed passports or documents. We don't find them flushed down the toilets. Most of these people, Deputy, are trafficked. They actually have been subject to a crime themselves, and you should admit that.